All right, let's dive into Oriana Power Ltd's second quarter, fiscal year 2025. We've got their raw data, some press releases, even their investor presentation.
Yeah, that presentation is pretty flashy.
It is very visual. But our goal today, of course, is to cut through all that, get to the heart of how Oriana's actually doing.
Right. Pull out the key insights.
And there's some really interesting things like, Oriana is making some big moves in green hydrogen. Their revenue growth is honestly kind of crazy.
They're definitely trying to present themselves as this fast-moving disruptor in the energy sector.
Yeah,
But do the numbers actually support that? That's what we want to figure out.
exactly. So, quick recap for anyone who needs it. Oriana Power, Indian company. They specialize in these renewable energy solutions. Been around for over 10 years, publicly traded. You can find them on the National Stock Exchange of India. The ticker symbol is Oriana. And they've already got a pretty impressive track record, like over 254 megawatts worth of projects they've delivered.
And they're not slowing down at all. In fact, they're aiming for a capacity of 1 gigawatt by 2026.
A gigawatt. Okay, so that's the big picture. But let's get into the nitty-gritty of Q2, fiscal year 25. How did they actually do?
Well, their revenue from operations is showing a huge increase. I mean, we're talking a jump to over 35,954 lakhs. That's in the first half of FY25, right? Compared to just over 6,405 lakhs during the same period last year.
Okay, so how much growth are we talking, percentage-wise?
Well, when you crunch the numbers, that translates to a year-over-year growth rate of, get this, 461%.
461. Okay, that's some serious growth. But revenue is just one piece of the puzzle. What about profitability? Are they just burning through cash to get these numbers?
That's a good question, but actually no. Their PAT, their profit after tax, that grew over 8 times to 4,857 lakhs in the first half of this fiscal year. And their EBITDA, another good sign there, increasing over 6.5 times compared to last year.
Okay, so it's not just growth for the sake of growth. It's actually translating into profit.
Right. It's not just vanity metrics. It seems like they're actually executing well.
So they're firing on all cylinders. But the renewable energy market, everyone knows, it's super competitive. How are they managing to stand out? What's their strategy?
Well, their investor presentation gives us some clues.
Mm.
They're not just sticking with the usual solar installations, right? They're branching out into things like battery energy storage solutions, BESS they call it,
Right, BESS?
and compressed biogas. And they're actually projecting that these newer areas will make up a good chunk of their revenue next year.
So diversification is key for them. But is that enough to stay ahead? I mean, this market changes so fast. What else are they doing?
Well, they're really focusing on acquiring land strategically. Specifically, they're looking at locations that are close to power substations,
Why is that?
because that can drastically reduce energy loss during transmission. The smart move helps them optimize their project development and keep costs down.
Makes sense. Efficiency is everything in this game.
Exactly. And they're also they're expanding their IPP portfolio,
IPP.
independent power producer, which basically means they're owning and operating more of their own power generating assets. Shows they're confident about the long-term profitability of these projects.
So they're not just building for others, they're putting their money where their mouth is.
Yeah, exactly. It's a strong signal.
But, all right, I got to ask about the green hydrogen. Everyone's talking about it. How does Oriana fit into that whole picture?
Well, from what we can see, they're going all in on green hydrogen. They seem to see it as a crucial part of their future.
Okay, but for people who aren't following this as closely, why is green hydrogen such a big deal?
It's being touted as like a game changer in the fight against climate change because it can potentially decarbonize those sectors that are hard to electrify, like heavy industry, long-haul transportation, stuff like that. Oriana is basically betting that this technology will be huge in the future of energy.
Okay, so how are they actually approaching green hydrogen? What are they doing specifically?
We've partnered with a US-based firm, and they're building an electrolyzer gigafactory.
The gigafactory, wow.
Yeah, this is serious stuff. Electrolyzers are essential for green hydrogen. That's how you produce it. Basically, they split water molecules using renewable energy.
So they're not messing around.
Not at all. And they're thinking ahead, too. They've already secured a buyer for 100% of their green hydrogen production.
Wow, that's some impressive planning. So they're not leaving anything to chance.
Nope. They're thinking long term, which is smart because, India's green hydrogen market, it's projected to be worth, get this, $340 billion by 2050.
Okay, so we've got explosive growth, a smart diversification strategy, this big bet on green hydrogen. But let's take a step back. How does Oriana's story fit into the bigger picture of renewable energy in India?
That's a great question. I think to really understand that, we need to look at some key statistics about India. So India, right now they're ranked fourth globally for renewable energy capacity. And they've set this goal, 500 gigawatts of energy from non-fossil fuel sources by 2030.
So basically what you're saying is Oriana's success, it's tied to how India does overall with clean energy.
Yeah, exactly. Their growth strategy seems to match up perfectly with this national objective that India has.
But let's be honest. The renewable energy sector, it's tough. There are challenges everywhere you look. What are some of the things that Oriana might have to deal with as they try to grow?
Well, one of the biggest challenges, and this is true for anyone in this market, is the volatility.
Mm.
Energy markets are unpredictable. The prices for things like, say, solar panels, or the components you need for green hydrogen production, those can swing wildly, and that has a direct impact on profitability.
So even with a good plan, there's always this element of, you just can't control everything.
Right. There are these external factors, and then on top of that, you've got competition. The renewable energy sector in India, it's getting crowded, a lot of players. So Oriana has to keep innovating. They can't just stand still or they'll get left behind.
It's a race, and everyone wants to win. Anything else we should be paying attention to?
Government policies, regulations, those play a huge role in this sector. Any changes in incentives, new rules, even just shifts in priorities, those can really impact how Oriana operates. And of course, their profitability.
So they've got to be flexible, adapt to whatever's happening with the government.
Absolutely. And then you've got the practical challenges, like just securing land for these big projects, managing the supply chains, making sure the projects stay on schedule and within budget. It's a lot to juggle.
It sounds like they've got their work cut out for them. But, based on what we've seen, their track record, their vision, they seem ready to tackle it.
Yeah, they don't seem scared of the challenges. They're running towards them. That's what makes them interesting to follow.
One thing I noticed, in their materials, they really emphasize their team. What's the company culture like?
They definitely highlight their people, which I think it's nice to see. Especially in a company that's dealing with such complex technology. Their employee base, it's grown a lot.
Yeah.
From 92 to 166 members in just 1 year. And they've gotten some recognition, too, like the best places to work by the Times of India and an award for being a champion of the service sector.
So those awards, they suggest that Oriana is doing something right to keep their employees happy.
Yeah, and I think that kind of culture is really important in competitive industry. If you want to innovate, you got to attract and keep good people.
It's easy to forget that behind the numbers, the technology, it's people who are making it all happen.
Right. Ultimately, it's their passion that'll determine whether Oriana succeeds in the long run.
Speaking of success, how are investors reacting to all this, the performance, the plans?
Well, their stock's been doing pretty well, generally trending upwards. As of November 13th, 2024, their market cap was 4,749 crores, and their shareholder base is growing. They have over 9,857 investors now.
So the market seems to believe in their vision.
It does seem that way. And the management in the investor presentation, they sound pretty confident, too. They're projecting 8 to 10-fold growth by fiscal year 26 compared to the first half of 25.
That's a huge jump. Okay, let's talk about some of their specific projects. It's not just the traditional solar stuff, right?
No, it's very diverse. One project that really stands out is this floating solar plant they've developed.
Floating? What does that even mean?
It means they put solar panels on water. This one's at the Droli limestone mines. 2.7 megawatts. It's the first of its kind in India's cement industry.
So they're using water surfaces for solar energy.
Exactly. It's a great way to use space that's not being used for anything else, especially where land is limited. Plus, it's got environmental benefits. Less water evaporation even improves water quality.
Sounds like a win-win. What other innovative projects are they doing?
They're moving into the battery energy storage systems market, BESS. They've got a 300 megawatt-hour BES project in the works. And they're even adding BES to their solar projects to make the power supply more reliable.
So they're not just generating the energy, they're figuring out how to store it, too, which is a big issue with renewables.
Exactly. And they're also getting into compressed biogas, CBG, over 30 tons of CBG projects in their pipeline.
What is CBG? I'm not familiar with that.
So it's basically purified biogas from organic waste. You can use it as a fuel for transportation, cooking, even to generate power.
Turning waste into energy. That's pretty impressive.
It is. It shows their commitment to a circular economy, sustainable solutions.
Any other notable projects we should know about?
Well, they just finished a 7.2 megawatt solar rooftop plant in Jaipur, Rajasthan.
Hmm.
and a 4.5 megawatt solar plant for Hindustan Copper. That one's in Malanjkan, Madhya Pradesh. These projects help these companies get away from fossil fuels, move towards a cleaner energy mix.
So they're working with all sorts of clients, different industries, different needs.
Yeah, and it's not just the big projects. They're doing community level stuff too, like virtual net metering for 450 parks in Delhi.
Virtual net metering, what's that?
It's a system that lets people who don't have their own solar panels still benefit from solar energy, like if you live in an apartment or just don't have space for panels. You can still use clean energy.
Okay, that's a good way to make solar more accessible. What else are they doing in the community space?
They're also working on what will be India's largest agro-photovoltaic project in Delhi.
Agrophotovoltaic, that's a new one.
It's a cool concept. Basically, they combine agriculture and solar energy. So you've got solar panels installed above crops. They provide shade and generate energy at the same time.
So they're using the land for food, A&D, clean energy. Smart.
It's a great example of how Oriana is always pushing the boundaries, exploring new things in renewable energy.
Okay, so we've got floating solar, battery storage, biogas, rooftop installations, virtual net metering, agrophotovoltaics. It's a lot.
They're definitely not lacking in ambition or creativity.
They're not afraid to experiment, challenge the way things are usually done. That's great to see.
Their portfolio shows how adaptable they are and their commitment to finding new solutions to these energy challenges.
It's inspiring, honestly, to see a company like this taking such a proactive approach to a cleaner future.
Their success really shows the demand for renewable energy and how much potential companies like Oriana have to make a difference.
We've covered a lot today, their performance, their plans, the projects, the challenges, but there's still more to talk about. In the last part of our deep dive, we'll look at their vision for the future, their role in India's clean energy transition, and what it all means for the global shift towards sustainable energy. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. So we've dug into Oriana's numbers, we've seen the cool projects they're working on. Now let's look ahead. What is their long-term vision? Where do they see themselves going?
Well, their investor presentation, it has this whole roadmap. They call it Vision 2030.
Catchy.
Right. And by 2030, their goal is to hit over 6 gigawatts
Mm.
in ETC capacity and over 2.5 gigawatts in IPP capacity. And that's just for the solar sector.
So they want to be a major player, both in building and owning the solar infrastructure.
Exactly. But it's not just solar. They're also targeting 3.5 gigawatt hours in the BSS market by 2030.
So energy storage is a big part of the plan, too. Okay, but what about those newer areas? The CBG and green hydrogen, where do those fit in?
Oh, they've got ambitious targets for those too. For CBG, they're looking at a 25% annual growth rate, which is a big ramp up in production. And for green hydrogen, remember that Gigafactory partnership? They're aiming for an initial capacity of 500 megawatts by 2026. And then they want to add another 500 megawatts by 2027.
Wow, it sounds like they're trying to be a leader in pretty much every part of India's clean energy market.
Yeah. And their vision, it lines up with what India is trying to do as a country, reaching 500 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity by 2030.
Right. Oriana's growth is basically tied to India's success with clean energy.
Absolutely. They're definitely trying to take advantage of this whole shift towards renewables that's happening in India.
Okay, but let's zoom out even more. What does Oriana's story tell us about, like, the global push for sustainable energy?
I think it's a good example of what we're seeing around the world. People are realizing we need to move away from fossil fuels. And companies like Oriana are proving it can be done. You can be profitable and sustainable.
They're showing that investing in clean energy is good for the planet, A&D, good for business.
Exactly. And their success is inspiring other companies, both in India and globally. It's like this ripple effect. More and more people are adopting these renewable technologies. And as that happens, the costs go down.
That's the key, right? Getting those costs down.
It is. And it feels like things are starting to change quickly now. Governments are setting big goals. Investors are putting money into clean energy. Consumers are demanding it. It's a big shift.
But are we really at a tipping point? I mean, there's still challenges.
Oh, for sure. The transition to a fully sustainable energy future, it's going to be tough. There are technical hurdles, infrastructure needs to be built, and there will be pushback from people who benefit from the way things are now. But the progress we've made, you can't deny it. And companies like Oriana, they give me hope.
Yeah, they show that it's possible, that even with these huge challenges, if you're innovative, if you're determined, if you really believe in a better future, you can make a difference.
I agree.
Well, I think that's a great place to wrap up our deep dive into Oriana Power. We've looked at their performance, their plans, their projects, the challenges they face. It's been fascinating, and I'm really curious to see what they do next.
Me too. They're definitely a company to keep an eye on.
And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us. We hope you learned something new about renewable energy and the amazing work that companies like Oriana are doing. The shift to a sustainable future, it's something we're all a part of. So keep exploring, keep learning, and we'll catch you next time.